My name is Sophia. I'm 31 years old. The cemetery sat just off a narrow county road outside Hartwell, Ohio, where bare trees leaned over sagging telephone wires and the rainwater in the ditch reflected a sky the color of old steel. It had rained all night, stopped just before the service, not long enough to clear the air. The grass was still soft enough to swallow heels. Gravel lay dark with moisture. The wind carried the smell of funeral lilies, cold coffee, damp wool, black umbrellas, and that sharp metallic edge that comes right before another storm. People were already breaking apart into slow little groups. Women held casserole dishes wrapped in foil against their coats. Men stood near idling pickups and talked in low voices with their heads tilted close, like the wind might steal even their condolences. Then paper programs sagged at the corners, shoes sank in wet ground. Nobody looked at me for long. Not really. They looked, then looked away, then looked again. I stood beside the fresh grave in a plain black dress and tights too thin for the cold, with my fingers still remembering the polished wood of Daniel's casket. Just before they lowered him, I had pressed my palm to it like warmth could travel through varnish and cedar and somehow find him. It couldn't. Nothing could. My husband had been dead 6 days. 6 days of casseroles, soft voices, folded hands, and people saying words like instant and merciful, until those words lost all shape in my head. Highway collision, they said. Rain, they said. Bad visibility. A freight truck jackknifed on Route 33, instant, merciful. I repeated those words so many times they stopped sounding like comfort and started sounding like paperwork. Then my phone rang. I almost let it. I was numb enough to let almost anything happen to me that morning. But the name on the screen cut through the fog so clean it felt violent. Graham Ellis, my husband's boss. I stared at it for one beat too long before answering. Grief makes you obedient in strange ways. Hello? His voice came fast, too fast, lower than usual, roughened at the edges. Sophia, where are you? I looked at the grave, at the row of cars easing toward the cemetery gate. At the cemetery! A pause. Wind pushed hard into his side of the phone. I heard a car door slam. Then he said the sentence that split my life in two. You need to see this. Not I'm sorry. Not how are you holding up. Not take your time. Just that. You need to see this. Something cold moved straight down my spine. I turned away from the grave and walked a few steps toward the line of bare maples, heels sinking into wet grass, mud tugging at the leather. What is this about? The pause got longer, like he was deciding whether speaking it aloud would make it real. It's about Daniel, he said, and what he set up before he died. My grip tightened around the phone. I looked back over my shoulder. Denise, my mother-in-law, stood near the floral stand with her sister, one gloved hand around a paper cup, the other pressed to her chest like she was the widow. She had been wearing that face all week, soft, trembling, careful, too careful, like a woman waiting for someone to notice how beautifully she was grieving. What do you mean? Set up? I asked. Graham exhaled. I can't explain it cleanly over the phone. I found something in his office. Then I checked records I should have checked sooner. Sophia, you need to come now. He stopped, then added, quieter, before anyone else knows I called you. Anyone else. Those two words woke something inside me that grief had kept underwater. I looked at Denise again. She was watching me. Not casually, directly. Her eyes flicked from my face to the phone in my hand and back again. Then she turned away too quickly, like she'd been caught doing something she hadn't meant to do in daylight. I'm still at the funeral, I said. I know, Graham replied. That's why I called now. I couldn't wait. I should have gone home. I should have gone back with the family, and stood in a living room full of casseroles and sympathy flowers, and sat inside the silence of an apartment that still smelled like Daniel's cedar cologne and the vapor rub he used when he couldn't breathe through a cold. I should have stayed still. Instead, I said, I can be there in 20 minutes. I'll wait behind the office, Graham said. Back parking lot, don't come through the front. The line went dead. For half a second, I stared at my reflection in the black screen. Mascara smudged under one eye, face gray with exhaustion. Hair pinned too tight because my hands had been shaking that morning, and tight had felt safer than loose. Then Denise was beside me, too quickly. Who was that? The question came out before I had even lowered the phone. I slipped it into my purse. Work. Her mouth hardened for the briefest beat before softness returned. On today of all days? That phrasing sat wrong in my ear. Not on this day, not at the funeral. On today. Distracted, impatient. Like the line had come from somewhere else, and she was using it from memory. Graham, I said, he needs me to sign something from Daniel's office. She stared at me a second too long. That can wait? Maybe, maybe not. I think you should come with us, she said. People are coming by the house. Daniel's cousins from Dayton are already there. I almost corrected her. Not mine, his. But I was too tired to spend energy on precision. I'll meet you later. Pause. Another tiny freeze in her face. Then she touched my elbow through my coat. Don't make decisions today, sweetheart. You're not in the state for it. Not in the state for it. The words landed ugly, not concern. A line. A phrase prepared in advance. I looked at her hand until she took it away. I'm just picking something up, I said. She smiled with only half her mouth. Of course. I left before she could say anything else. The drive into town felt unreal. The wipers dragged across mist in dull, tired strokes. Tires hissed over wet pavement. Every building I passed looked offensively normal. The Walmart, the county clerk's office, the post office, the diner with the blue awning where Daniel and I used to eat pancakes after DMV appointments because adult life felt less insulting with syrup. Hartwell still had a Starbucks line. That was the cruel part. My world had split open and somebody was still arguing over oat milk. Graham waited behind the office near the loading dock, standing beside his silver SUV with a rain-darkened folder under one arm. The company was a regional logistics firm. Not glamorous, not exciting. Freight routing, vendor contracts, fleet systems, inventory planning. Reliable. Boring on paper. Good benefits. Daniel used to joke that he spent his whole day making sure other people's toilet paper got to stores on time. Graham did not look like a man bringing a widow a box of personal belongings. He looked sick. His tie was loose. His hair was windblown. His skin had the pale, flat tone of someone who had spent hours being punched by facts. When I stepped out of my car, he moved toward me fast, then stopped short like he had just remembered where I had been an hour ago. I'm sorry, he said. And unlike most people that week, he sounded like he meant only one thing. Sorry. No curiosity inside it, no relief that it wasn't his wife, no polite performance, just sorry. What happened? I asked. He glanced toward the building, then back at me. Come sit in my car. It's warmer. I followed him because the cold had stopped feeling outside my body and started feeling permanent. The inside of the SUV smelled like leather, stale peppermint gum, and old coffee. He handed me the folder, then kept one hand on it. I need to tell you how I found this first. I nodded. This morning, before the service, I came in early to clear Daniel's access profile. Standard procedure: laptop, badge, phone, security permissions, insurance and compliance stuff. I opened his office to collect everything. His jaw flexed. And there was a sealed envelope taped under his keyboard. I stared at him. For me? For me, Graham said. My name was on it. He let go of the folder. Inside was a letter on company letterhead, signed with Daniel's name, a resignation memo. Except it wasn't written like a normal resignation memo. It was addressed to human resources, corporate audit, legal compliance, and Graham. My eyes moved down the page. The first paragraph hit me so hard I had to read it twice. In the event of my unexpected death or incapacitation, I ask that the company immediately investigate irregular access by my spouse, Sophia Mercer, to my personal accounts, work devices, and restricted company files. I have reason to believe she has been emotionally unstable, has previously accessed my passwords without consent, and may attempt retaliatory actions involving financial or reputational harm. My vision narrowed. The paper trembled in my hands. I heard Graham still talking, but only pieces reached me. Not officially filed. Draft copy. Digital version scheduled to send. I looked up at him. This is fake. I know part of it is, he said. At minimum, it's manipulative as hell. At worst, it's part of something bigger. Part of it? There's more. He took back the letter and handed me another printout. A server log. An outgoing scheduled email from Daniel's company account, set to send at 4 p.m. that day. To HR, Legal, Compliance, and Graham. Subject line, Security Concern and Formal Statement. Beneath it was the attachment list. The first attachment was the letter. The second one stopped my thoughts cold. But Psychological Incident Summary. Sophia Mercer. PDF. I stared at it. My mouth opened, closed again. I've never seen that. I know, Graham said, because when I opened it, half of it looked like badly redacted medical paperwork and therapist intake material. The other half was invented. Someone tried to stitch private records and fiction together into something that looked official. A sound came out of me then. Small, raw, almost not human. My therapist intake form. I had gone after my miscarriage 2 years earlier. 3 sessions. Then I stopped because Daniel said we were moving forward and he wanted joy in the house again. Joy. That word nearly made me choke. Now those private forms had been cut apart and turned into a weapon. Where did he get those? I whispered. Graham didn't answer right away. Said because he had more. He turned his tablet toward me. A security clip from the hallway outside his office. Timestamp, 8:40 p.m., 3 weeks before Daniel died. I watched Daniel step out of Graham's office after hours, glance once up and down the empty hall, then reach back inside and take Graham's keycard from the hook just inside the door. He went back in. A minute later, he came out carrying a blue file box. He wheeled it into his own office. This footage normally gets overwritten every 30 days, Graham said. I only pulled it because the server showed someone accessed my executive permissions from Daniel's terminal that same night. I stared at the screen. That box had payroll authorization forms, executive vendor files, and beneficiary paperwork for higher-tier life insurance options. But things he had no business touching alone. My stomach dropped. Beneficiary paperwork? Graham nodded once. Then he handed me a photocopy. I looked down. My name wasn't there, not anywhere. Daniel had submitted an updated benefits designation through the company 4 weeks before his death. Primary emergency payout recipient, Denise Mercer. Secondary contact and advisory liaison, Rachel Dunn. Rachel. I knew Rachel. Finance department, then Columbus transfer. Sharp, efficient. Good with numbers, Daniel always said. I had met her once at a company Christmas dinner. Red dress, bright lipstick. She laughed too long at his jokes. I noticed it, then hated myself for noticing it. Because later that night in the car, Daniel had kissed my forehead and told me I was his home. Home. A beautiful word when a man is telling the truth, a disgusting one when he isn't. This beneficiary change was never fully processed, Graham said. Witness signature issue. Corporate didn't approve it, but Daniel kept a copy, and Denise was moved into emergency contact changes last month too. I swallowed hard. He was preparing for me to be cut out. Yes. Why? Graham looked down at his hands, then back up. Because I think he was building a record to make you look unstable, intrusive, and financially unsafe. If he died, the email would go out. HR and legal would freeze things internally. His mother would step in as the concerned adult in the room. And while you defended yourself, he handed me the final printout. A transfer authorization request from Daniel's personal business account to a new LLC. Harry Mercer Transit Advisory Group LLC, registered agent Rachel Dunn, pending beneficiary release instructions upon death, subject to documentation. The number sat there like a blunt instrument. $186,700 and something dollars. I read it twice, then a third time. That wasn't random money. That was our savings, our side contract money. The down payment fund for the house Daniel kept telling me we'd buy once the market cooled. I looked up slowly. He was stealing from me. Graham's face answered before his mouth did. I think he'd been moving joint funds for months. Rain ticked against the windshield. Fine, cold, steady. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. All week, grief had sat on my chest like wet concrete. Now it cracked, and underneath it, not emptiness, fire. And I set the papers down on my lap very carefully because my hands no longer felt trustworthy. When did you first know something was wrong? I asked. Graham rubbed a hand over his mouth. I knew he was under pressure, missing deadlines, defensive. He asked odd questions about posthumous processing, death in service benefits, spouse disputes. I thought he was anxious. We all travel. We all drive. I didn't push. He looked at me. I should have. That sentence stayed in the air between us. Some betrayals do not begin with cruelty. They begin with people deciding not to look too closely. I sat with that for one breath. Then I asked the only thing that mattered next. Why call me before anyone else? Because the scheduled email was supposed to go out today. Because if legal saw those documents first, they'd move into protection mode, quietly, freeze access, minimize liability, and because one more thing was attached. He turned the tablet back toward me. A draft affidavit, prepared, unsigned. From Denise. It stated that over the past year I had become paranoid, obsessive about Daniel's whereabouts, verbally volatile, and incapable of responsibly handling finances after a series of emotional episodes. Every sentence was calm, measured, professional. It didn't read like grief, it read like strategy. Your mother-in-law was ready, Graham said. At the cemetery, she had told me not to make decisions today because I was not in the state for it. I heard it again, different now, not comfort, a test line, a rehearsed phrase from a script she had already practiced. And I leaned back against the seat and stared through the windshield at the rain slipping down the glass. A woman can survive a difficult mother-in-law. A cold one, a jealous one, a controlling one. What she cannot prepare for is the moment she realizes condolences were only the first layer of a legal plan. I asked Graham to email me everything. He already had. He had also disabled the scheduled message. For now. I need originals, I said. You'll have them. Metadata. You'll have that too. The words came out of me calm and sharp, and I think we both noticed it. Grief had not left me. It had just stepped back long enough to let something colder stand up. Do you have a lawyer? Graham asked. My father's cousin does probate in Newark. Call him today. I will. When I got home, Denise wasn't there. Thank God. And I needed the apartment empty. The place looked like grief had moved in before I did. Sympathy cards on the counter, a foil tray of baked ziti from a churchwoman whose name I could not remember, black shoes by the door, Daniel's hoodie hanging off the back of a dining chair. I stopped when I saw it. That hoodie. He had worn it last July 4th, standing over the grill with smoke in his hair and a spatula in one hand, teasing my niece for stealing strawberries before dessert. Everybody had loved him that day. He looked so ordinary in memory. That's what deception counts on. Ordinary tenderness. A man who hangs Christmas lights straight. A man who remembers to change smoke detector batteries. A man who kisses your forehead in parking lots. I went straight to the hall closet and pulled down the lockbox from the top shelf. The marriage license, passport, social security card, tax folders, joint bank statements, the rent-to-own condo paperwork. I spread everything across the dining table beside my laptop and the half-dead succulent I kept forgetting to water. Then I called Arthur Bell. He answered on the fourth ring, sounding tired and formal until I said my name and told him whose funeral I had just come from. His tone changed immediately. "Tell me only what matters first." So I did. No crying, no history, no wandering, fake incident file, scheduled email, forged narrative, beneficiary switch, hidden money, Denise affidavit. Arthur was silent long enough that I could almost hear him turning toward his printer. Then he said very clearly, "Do not speak to your mother-in-law alone tonight. Do not sign anything. Do not hand over passwords, sound devices, keys, records, or account access. Forward everything to my secure email and text me your address. I'm driving in." That steadiness saved me. People think rescue has to look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a 63-year-old man in a navy raincoat arriving with a portable scanner and saying, "Let's slow this down." Arthur got there just after 6. By then I had already found 3 things that made me sick. First, our joint savings had dropped by almost $40,000 over the previous 4 months in transfers labeled consulting reimbursement. Daniel handled most of the long-term accounts because he liked spreadsheets and because I trusted him. There was the stupidity of my marriage, laid out in tidy rows. Second, my access to one of our investment portals had been changed 2 weeks earlier. A recovery email no longer mine. Third, I found a yellow legal pad in Daniel's desk drawer with a page torn off and impressions still visible underneath. Old trick, pencil shading. I used the side of the lead gently. The buried writing came up in gray grooves. "Mom, if timing changes, wait until probate opens." Graham signs once pressure is on. Rachel knows the rest. Arthur stood beside me, reading over my shoulder. "Photograph it," he said. I did. Then he bagged the page in a clear sleeve like it already belonged in evidence. At 7:30, Denise called. I let it ring. Then she texted, "You should be with family tonight." A minute later, "People are worried about you." Then, "Daniel would not want you alone." Arthur read all 3 and shook his head. "Don't answer." At 8:15, someone knocked. Not hard, not frantic. And a controlled knock. Arthur checked the peephole first. "Your mother-in-law." I opened the door only because Arthur stood just behind me. Denise wore a camel coat and grief-like jewelry. Perfect hair, pale lipstick, wet shoes, controlled breathing. She looked exactly like the kind of woman people describe as holding up so well. Her eyes flicked past me immediately. "You have company." "Yes." Arthur stepped into view. "Arthur Bell," he said. "Counsel for Sophia Mercer." That changed her. Only for a second, but enough. Her shoulders rose a fraction, her mouth parted. "Counsel?" Arthur gave her a smile with no warmth in it. "Can we help you?" She recovered fast. "I came to check on my daughter-in-law." I had never heard her call me that in front of anyone before. "How kind," Arthur said. Denise looked directly at me. "Yes, Sophia, can we talk privately?" "No." Her gaze cooled. "You're overwhelmed?" "I'm informed." Something flashed in her face then. Not sorrow, not concern, calculation. "What has Graham told you?" There it was. Not "Did Graham call?" Not "Is everything all right?" What has Graham told you? Arthur didn't miss it. Neither did I. "Enough," I said. She drew a slow breath through her nose. "Daniel had concerns." My whole body went hot. "Did he?" "Yes." Her tone softened, but only on the surface. Toward the end, he was frightened by your moods, your spending, the tension in the home. Arthur cut in before I could. Mrs. Mercer, any further claims of that nature can be directed to my office in writing. She ignored him. Sophia, I know this is a terrible time, but there are estate matters that require steady hands. You may not want the burden right now. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because suddenly I could see the machinery. Every gear, every little polished sentence. She expected me half-conscious with grief, ashamed, disoriented, too shattered to notice the trap. The line came out of me before I could stop it. Some people come to a grave to mourn, some come to collect. Denise stared at me. Rain tapped the porch rail. Arthur took one measured step forward. This visit is over. Her face changed all at once. No softness now, no mother-in-grief performance, only anger. You have no idea what Daniel was dealing with. I looked straight at her. And you have no idea how much he wrote down. That landed. She went very still. Then she looked at Arthur, back to me, and said, Jace, be careful who you trust. I answered quietly, I should have started with you. She left without another word. Arthur watched her taillights disappear before closing the door. Well, he said, that was useful. By midnight, we had copied every document I could still access, frozen one joint credit line, flagged potential estate interference with the bank, and drafted a preservation letter to Graham's company demanding retention of Daniel's devices, email archives, access logs, benefits files, payroll records, and security footage. Arthur also made me eat half a granola bar and drink water from a mason jar because all my clean glasses were still stacked beside casseroles. Sometime after 1 a.m, exhausted beyond crying, I remembered something small. 2 Sundays before Daniel died, I had walked into the kitchen and found him shredding papers by hand instead of using the little office shredder under the desk. I teased him for being dramatic. He smiled too quickly. Old budgeting junk. I kissed his cheek and went upstairs to change for church. Now the memory came back smelling different. Not paper. Fear. The next morning Graham called again. He had gone deeper into server backups overnight with IT under the cover of audit review. He found exports from a private email account Daniel had accessed through his work machine. Messages between Daniel and Rachel. Not love notes. Worse. Plans. Transition timing. Narrative control. Keeping Sophia defensive rather than curious. One line burned itself into me. If she hears affair first, she'll chase the wrong injury. That sentence changed everything. The affair was not the main betrayal, it was bait. Humiliation, used like smoke. While money moved, documents moved, reputation moved. I drove to Arthur's office in Newark with a Starbucks cup cooling untouched in the cup holder and the radio off. Arthur had printed the emails by the time I arrived. Yellow tabs stuck out from the pages, notes in the margins, quiet fury dressed as legal organization. Rachel and Daniel had registered the LLC 6 weeks before his death. Rachel drafted the operating language. Daniel promised seed capital after the estate window. They mentioned a condo in Columbus, too. Not in romantic language exactly, but in that casual, entitled tone people use when they are already spending money they think they will keep. Then Arthur found the hinge. That one attachment in the chain was a scanned notary page for a temporary power of guidance document about Daniel's anticipated incapacity during travel risk. The notary's stamp was from Licking County. Arthur looked up. Do you know a Marlene Pike? I blinked. Yes, or I know of her. County clerk's office. Denise's church friend. Arthur wrote something down. Good. Good? It means the circle is smaller than they hoped. That afternoon, we pulled the public business filing. Mercer Transit Advisory Group, LLC. Filed by Rachel Dunn. Supplemental note added 2 days later by third-party courier. The courier receipt listed a contact number. Denise's cell phone. I stared at it while Arthur smiled in that flat, dangerous way lawyers smile when a case stops being fog and starts becoming shape. "We move fast now," he said. The next few days changed me by inches. Quiet inches. I slept badly. I wore the same 2 sweaters. I kept every receipt. I learned the rhythm of death certificates, affidavit drafts, certified mail, legal holds, account freezes, and probate forms. I stood in line at the county clerk's office with folders against my chest, while people around me renewed tags and requested marriage certificates like normal life hadn't just turned into a crime scene. At window 3, Marlene Pike looked up, saw my name on the file, and froze. Just for a second. But long enough. That was all. Human beings tell on themselves with their faces before they do it anywhere else. Arthur asked for certified copies of every filing connected to Daniel's recent notarized documents. Marlene cleared her throat. I'll need to check processing status." Arthur gave her the matter number in a voice that carried just enough. "County Clerk. Case number 2024-17823. We'll also need the logbook entry and all identification records presented at notarization." Her cheeks lost color. "Of course." Outside on the courthouse steps, slick with mist, Arthur tucked the file under his arm and said, "She's scared." Because she helped them? Because documents live longer than loyalties. That line stayed with me. Documents live longer than loyalties. Meanwhile, Graham kept feeding us pieces. Daniel had downloaded restricted vendor projections he could potentially have sold. He had tried to route one suspicious access event through my IP address by remotely using a shared account from home. Yet the cybersecurity lead disproved it because the session token came from Daniel's company phone sitting in a Speedway parking lot 20 miles away. There was also a voicemail. Rachel to Daniel, 3 days before the crash. Arthur played it through his office speaker. Her voice was polished and impatient. "You told me your mother had Sophia contained. I need confirmation before Friday. If the beneficiary fight gets messy, I'm not babysitting this. And make sure Graham signs the severance version, not the family one." Contained. That word took the last softness out of me. I was not a wife in their version. I was an obstacle. After that, memories started changing shape. Yet Daniel insisting on handling our taxes because he was better with systems. Daniel saying my name didn't need to stay on one brokerage login because it confused the dashboard. Daniel asking for a copy of my therapy receipt while organizing health deductions. Daniel telling Denise at Thanksgiving that I had been having a hard time lately, while I stood just inside the pantry with a stack of paper plates in my hands. Back then, it had sounded protective. Now I heard it differently. The record being built, bit by bit, sentence by sentence, concern used as scaffolding. The betrayal wasn't sudden. That was the hard truth. It was patient. That's what made it monstrous. Late one night, I sat on the bathroom floor because the apartment still felt too full of him to breathe in. And a thought came to me so clearly it almost sounded spoken aloud. The cruelest lies are not the loud ones. They are the ones that ask for your trust in a familiar voice. Arthur moved carefully, but he moved. He filed an emergency petition to preserve estate assets and block non-spousal interference pending review. Graham's company opened an internal fraud inquiry. Rachel, we learned, had already contacted payroll twice after Daniel's death, claiming she was assisting with executive transition documents. She was not executive anything. She was prey circling paperwork. Then Denise made her move. A petition arrived by courier requesting temporary oversight of estate decisions due to my documented emotional instability and compromised judgment. Attached, the signed version of the affidavit we had already seen. And a supporting letter from Marlene Pike, presenting herself not as a notary, but as a longtime family acquaintance aware of recent concerns. Arthur read the packet once and gave that cold little smile again. They just handed us conspiracy instead of grief. He subpoenaed everything: notary logs, call records, church donation connections between Denise and Marlene, Rachel's LLC filing chain, company access logs, bank transfer destinations. The hearing was set for Thursday. The night before, I sat in the apartment surrounded by bankers' boxes, listening to the refrigerator hum and the occasional swish of tires below the window. Daniel's side of the closet was still full. Shirts organized by color, cufflinks in a shallow tray, the dark suit he wore to Christmas Eve service hanging in its dry cleaning plastic. And I unzipped the cover and touched the sleeve. For 1 second, grief came back clean. Before the fraud, before the evidence, before rage had somewhere to stand. I loved him. That had been true. It hurt to admit that after everything, but it remained true. Love doesn't vanish just because it was weaponized. It changes shape. Sometimes it becomes mourning for your own innocence. The hearing took place in a beige second-floor probate room with flags in the corner and a heater that clicked every 7 minutes. Denise arrived in navy, composed, carrying a leather planner and a packet of tissues she never used. Rachel came too, though she had no real reason to be there unless she already knew things would surface. Her hair was sleek, her face was brittle. She did not look at me. Graham sat behind Arthur. And so did the cybersecurity lead. Arthur had told me in the parking lot, "Do not perform strength, just tell the truth." That helped. The truth doesn't need theater when the paperwork is good. Denise spoke first. She used the voice of a woman discussing flowers for a church luncheon, concerned for Sophia, worried about her condition. Daniel had confided fears. She referenced my miscarriage with sorrowful tact. I sat still and let her build the rope. Then Arthur stood. He began with the forged narrative documents, then the scheduled posthumous email, then the server logs, then the fake psychological summary made from partial medical records, then Rachel's voicemail, then the LLC filing tied to Denise's phone, then the notary irregularities, then the transfer trail, then, almost gently, and he offered the yellow legal pad photograph into evidence. "Mom, if timing changes, wait until probate opens. Graham signs once pressure is on. Rachel knows the rest." Rachel broke first. Not dramatically, just a sharp inhale, a dropped gaze that lasted too long. Denise kept her chin up, but inside her handbag her fingers crushed the tissue packet flat. Arthur questioned Marlene Pike under oath. Had she notarized Daniel's incapacity documents in person? "Yes," she said. Arthur produced parking lot footage from the clerk's office on the date of one notarization, Marlene accepting an envelope from Denise. No Daniel, no ID check, no personal appearance, no lawful notarization. Marlene's voice thinned. Then Arthur turned to Rachel. "Did she hold any ownership interest in Mercer Transit Advisory Group LLC?" She tried to sidestep. One, he produced the filing, then the seed capital note, then the email about keeping me defensive rather than curious. Her lawyer stood, objected, sat down, objected again. It didn't matter much. Graham testified last. He described finding the scheduled email, the forged internal materials, the unauthorized access pattern, and Daniel's attempt to root company concern toward me after his death. He did not dramatize. He didn't need to. He just laid down the roadmap of a dead man's ambush. The judge looked at Denise for a long time, then at me, then back at the documents. Temporary oversight petition denied. Emergency preservation order granted. Potential fraud referral noted. Questionable beneficiary documents suspended. Third-party contact with estate assets prohibited pending full review. No one gasped. No one confessed. No applause. Just paperwork turning back into oxygen. Outside the courthouse, Rachel came toward me at last. The wind shoved hair across her lipstick. "I didn't know all of it," she said. I looked at her. That face. that expensive tote, that careful, expensive composure, that woman who thought she would inherit the polished edges of my life. "How much did you know?" She said nothing, so I answered for her. "Enough to stay," she flinched. "He told me you were volatile," she said quietly. "He said you'd destroy him if he left." There it was. Men like Daniel do not just lie. They audition sympathy in every room they enter. I stepped closer. "He also told me I was home." Rachel's eyes dropped. "Take that up with the dead," I said, and I walked away. Consequences came the way Arthur promised they would. Not all at once, one hard click at a time. Graham's company referred Daniel's conduct for internal and insurance review, freezing discretionary payouts tied to the manipulated paperwork. Rachel's LLC came under scrutiny for attempted fraudulent transfer intent. Marlene was suspended pending investigation into improper notarization. Denise's attorney withdrew from estate representation after the hearing exhibits entered the record. Then the bank found more. 2 cashier's checks, prepared, not cashed, both payable to Rachel's LLC, both drafted 3 days before Daniel died. The amount matched the remaining shortfall in our house fund. He had timed it very closely, too closely. Arthur said something then that I repeated to myself for months. "He died before the last move, that's why you can still see the board." He was right. So if Daniel had lived another week, maybe he would have moved more, signed more, buried more, smiled through more dinners while hollowing out my future with both hands. His death did not end the betrayal. It interrupted it. And that interruption saved me. By early December, the church whispers had started traveling in a different direction. Hartwell is not a large town. People hear things, sort them badly, retell them worse. I knew better than to mistake gossip for justice, but I would be lying if I said I felt nothing when Denise's prayer circle friends stopped saying my name like it came with a warning attached. The company Christmas dinner was canceled that year. Officially, budget reasons. Unofficially, too many people knew too much. I stayed home, wrapped gifts for my nieces, left a Hallmark movie playing low. While I lit a cinnamon candle Daniel once said gave him a headache. Snow pressed against the windows. My phone stayed mostly silent. For the first time in months, quiet did not feel like punishment. Probate took longer, it always does. But the central truths held. The fake instability narrative collapsed. The contested beneficiary changes died on the record. Most assets reverted to lawful spousal control. The fraudulent transfer path failed before completion. Rachel settled civil exposure questions through her own counsel after turning over messages and admitting awareness of what she called estate positioning. Denise never apologized. Women like her rarely do when apology would require self-recognition. Instead, she sent one last letter. No return address. Just a card in my mailbox in January. Families survive by protecting their own. I stood in the apartment lobby with that sentence in my hand until the anger inside me cooled into something cleaner. Then I wrote one line on the back before filing it with Arthur. So do predators. Months later, when the legal dust had thinned enough for me to breathe normally again, I went back to the cemetery alone. Late March, thaw in the ground, same narrow road, same leaning wires. No mourners now, no black umbrellas, no foil-wrapped casseroles, just dry grass bending in the wind and a dog barking somewhere beyond the fence line. Daniel's marker had been set, his name clean in stone. Beloved husband and son. I stood there with my coat buttoned to my chin and looked at those words until they seemed to belong to a stranger. I had brought papers with me, not flowers, copies. The order denying Denise's petition, the fraud-related filings, the company notice preserving the evidence Daniel left behind. A woman at peace might have burned them. I wasn't at peace, not then. I only wanted the truth close to the lie for once. I spoke out loud because silence had protected enough people already. You almost got away with it. Wind pushed at my hair. I would have defended you, even after. I would have told people you were scared, tired, stressed. I would have carried your good name for you. My throat tightened. My voice didn't. You built a trap and expected grief to keep me standing in it. Then I stopped, just stood there breathing, cold in, cold out. And the last thing came, small and sharp. You should have finished with honesty. I did not leave the papers on the grave. He did not deserve an audience. I put them back in my bag and walked away lighter than I arrived. That is the strange shape of moral victory. It is not always loud, not always satisfying in the way people imagine. Sometimes it feels like finally setting down a weight you did not know you were still carrying. I sold the apartment that summer once the rent-to-own mess and deed issues were cleaned up. I moved into a smaller townhouse with a cracked front step and a maple tree in back. The HOA still sent petty little emails. I still hated that. But the place was mine. I changed every password, learned every account, read every line before signing, bought a cheap grill, put up my own July 4th lights, crooked and stubborn and a little uneven. Some nights I still wake up at 3 and think I hear Daniel in the kitchen. Grief keeps old habits, but it no longer owns the house. The last time I saw Graham, we met outside a diner off Route 16. He handed me the final certified packet Arthur had requested. He looked older than he had the day of the funeral. "Took courage," he said. "No," I told him. "It took timing." He smiled, tired. "Maybe both." Maybe, but courage gets too much credit sometimes for what survival does under pressure. Sometimes you do not rise because you are brave. Sometimes you rise because lying down would finish the job they started. That may be the most honest thing I learned. And this, too. The day of my husband's funeral was supposed to be the day my life closed around a grave, a pile of sympathy cards, and a story other people had prepared for me. Instead, it was the day his boss called and said, "Duh, you need to see this." He was right. I needed to see all of it. The forged concern, the hidden money, the woman waiting in Columbus, the mother already rehearsing my instability, the careful legal pathways designed to leave me poor, discredited, and alone while people praised Daniel's memory over baked ham in lowered voices. I needed to see it, because grief without truth is a cage. Truth hurts differently. Truth cuts. Truth breaks skin. But truth also opens doors. And once it did, I never stepped back inside their version of me again.